Well, hello and welcome to today's taping of the 4 and 3 podcast. Myself, Dan Andros, Goins-Phillips. And again, as always, a ton going on today. And just ready to dive into it in just a second here for the live taping.
Yeah. Anytime, so on the podcast today, we're talking about Coca-Cola as one of the stories. And anytime we talk about Coca-Cola or even Disney, it just pains me because I'm such a fan of both of them.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm ever going to not be a fan, but it's just kind of like, that family member that you love them, but it's like, you drive me up a wall.
I know.
Well,
the virtue signaling, it's so... Companies used to, now look, I'll give you, I worked for many years for a high profile personality on Fox News and CNN, and you'd have all these left-wing groups would come at you and they would try to do these boycotts, and the advertisers just wouldn't. The secret that they didn't want people to know was that advertisers just didn't want to deal with controversy. They're like, look, we just want to advertise our product, put it in front of a bunch of people that might buy it, and do that. And so they just wanted to avoid it. And then all the left-wing people would say, when an advertiser is like, I don't want to deal with all these complaints, blah, 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 and they leave, they'd be like, oh, see, they agree with us. Like, no, they don't agree with you. They don't want to deal with controversy. But now that's shifted, and now they want to virtue signal. Now they've decided the best course of action is to virtue signal to everybody. And I still think they just want their products sold. They don't really care. And case in point to this, we're in Pride Month here, Trey. And I saw one from, I don't know if you saw this, but I checked and it looked like it was correct because I went to the BMW site. But BMW was doing, they changed their logo to the rainbow flag thing. But then BMW Saudi Arabia, which they had a specific Twitter handle for, did not have the rainbow logo. So
I'm just...
Apparently... Where the LGBT rights are needed the most in Saudi Arabia, they don't want to push it there. And so, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe it was just an oversight. But it sure seems like they know it won't play well there, so they don't... It's not an issue they actually care about. They're pandering to you. I mean, it's just, it's a calculation that most of these companies have made. Now, I haven't checked the BMW handle today. Maybe I should check it and see if they've changed it. Let's see.
While you're looking at that, I think the Pride and the CRT stuff, the fact that so many companies are virtue signaling is pretty weird because I think most Americans still are not comfortable with it, but they're just so afraid of like 5 people on Twitter getting angry and it being enough to get an article on CNN. So it's like really a really loud minority of people is dictating what these companies do, which is so dumb.
It is. It's very sad. And hopefully they realize at some point that that's just not, you're just playing into and you're allowing yourself to be used as a pawn. I mean, if you really care about an issue, great, but do what you want. But I just don't think that's what it is in most of these cases. And so as evidenced by, if they really believed, and I just checked the BMW thing and it's still not rainbow in the Saudi Arabia one. And it's like, if you really believe in that issue, well, then put your money where your mouth is and do it in a place that matters.
Right.
Here you get the red carpet rolled out for you if you promote LGBT, whatever their cause of the day is, you promote that and you're going to get celebrated by celebrities. Everyone's going to praise you. Yay. But not in Saudi Arabia. You won't, but that's where you could actually make, real change and maybe where it's needed more. So
yeah, I think that's the case. Right. If you're going to do it somewhere where it's actually brave, where it's actually controversial and going to actually make an impact. Because here we have all these companies roll out all this rainbow stuff, which is fine. They're private companies, do what you want. And then we have to all of these storefronts are rainbow and we have to listen to and read all these emails about how, the LGBT community is so oppressed. So we have to do this. It's so oppressed that for a month long, it's literally all we talk about, and it's in our faces all day long at every corporation across the country.
Impressive.
But yes, let's keep going with the fact that the LGBT community, certainly there are cases of bullying and mistreatment, and those are wrong across the board. But to act like this is not a community that's celebrated is just silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I, for one, though, in the June month of now that it's now called Pride Month, I'm just glad that we are reminded with the rainbow logo of God's promise never to flood the earth again. I don't want to drown, and God said he won't do that again. So I'm happy about that, and praise God for that he spared just some of us so that we could still live, even though all the earth was filled with nothing but evil thoughts. Can't help but think we're almost there again, but he won't flood us, so that's good. That's good. So
some other way, but not with water.
Right, no, not with water. I don't want to think about what the other ways could be. All right, on that happy note, let's fire up the podcast. Here we go.
Faithwire.com.
Hello and welcome to 4 and 3, a podcast breaking down 4 of the most important stories of the day and 3 things you need to know about them, all from a Christian perspective. Today is Thursday, June 3rd, 2021. I'm Dan Andros. Coming up on the podcast today, critical race theory takes center stage at the SBC, and a North Carolina county is banning CocaCola machines over the soda company's leftist agenda. In California, yes, California has to pay more churches millions of dollars, and Comcast just delivered a major setback to the world's largest pornography site. We will have those stories and more, as always, with Trey Goins-Phillips from Faithwire.com. Trey, how's it going today?
Good. It's going well. It's just another day in paradise.
Yes.
Another day in paradise.
Indeed. Indeed.
So it's weird when it's a holiday week, right? Because since we're off on Monday as a federal holiday with Memorial Day, I'm a day behind throughout the rest of the week.
Yep. I've already messed up a couple of appointments and things that we have normally scheduled because I just in my mind was, one day off. So hopefully by the end of the week we're all caught up and everything feels normal again. So, all right, let's dive right in. Here we go. Story number 1. Critical race theory taking center stage at the SBC, and the annual meeting of the Southern Baptist Conventions in Nashville, Tennessee this month. It's going to see CRT right at the forefront. Resolution 9 currently acknowledges critical race theory as a, quote, useful tool to explain how race has and continues to function in society. And now many are looking to strip that resolution of its power within SBC. Denny Burke, professor of biblical studies at Boyce College, said he was aware of nearly 60 resolutions being submitted to the Resolutions Committee asking SBC messengers to condemn critical race theory. According to the Christian Post, Burke said, "I'm aware that a number of people have submitted resolutions relating to CRT. I know of at least 3 that are opposed to CRT and at least 1 that is in favor of CRT." Mike Stone, who's the pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Blackshear, Georgia, and one of 3 nominees trying to become the next president of the SBC, recently proposed a resolution asking the denomination to condemn it. The proposed resolution also seeks to affirm the portion of the November 2020 statement from the Council of Seminary Presidents, and it states, "Affirmation of critical race theory, intersectionality, and any version of critical theory is incompatible with the Baptist faith and message." So that's on tap at the SBC. A lot going on there. What's the left saying? Well, left, as we've talked about a lot, Trey, and many on the right, including Matt Chandler's The Village Church, have accepted a lot of the tenets of CRT, and we're seeing a lot of anti-racism ideas pop up in more and more churches, not just far left progressive churches. So what's the right saying? Well, as we talked about, Vodi Bakum, others in general believe that CRT is antithetical to the gospel message, that they're 2 competing worldviews and then they cannot coexist. So why does it matter? This is a big deal within the church, and you could see some major fracturing happening down the line if this thing is not resolved.
Yeah, I think there's, before we started taping, Dan, you and I were talking about how I think the SBC has some issues that it needs to deal with. Like there are obviously as Christians, you want to address racism and weed that out wherever it might
course.
be. And that's a problem for any denomination. It's just where humans are, there's going to be sin. And then also weeding out allegations of sexual misconduct, and that those stories have been in the news over the last several months. So I think there's important stuff that they need to deal with, and I want to be careful that they don't lump all of those legitimate concerns in with CRT.
Yeah.
But obviously, I as we've talked about before, there are many issues with CRT, and I think it's antithetical to Scripture and to the gospel. So I think that needs to be addressed. And also, I think we need to be careful not to lump in all Southern Baptists with the allegations that we're seeing. And that's something that Dan Darling, he's a Southern Baptist. He's also one of the vice presidents at the National Religious Broadcasters Association. He tweets about that often. It's like, let's not lump all Southern Baptists in with these allegations, even if they're credible. That's fine, and we need to address those credible allegations of wrongdoing, whether it's over race or sexuality, whatever. But then to suggest that all SBC members are part of this systemically broken denomination, whatever, is not necessarily true. So I think it's just kind of being nuanced in our approach with it, and we'll see what happens in the weeks to come with the convention.
Yeah, and we should all be in prayer for just the church in general, not just the SBC, but just the church, Christ's church in general, because we don't want to see division in the church, and this is certainly setting up to pit people against one another, and so we don't want to see that. So we want to see the truth prevail. We want to see the gospel prevail. So however that can happen, let's pray for that to happen. And I'll just add as well that we stop viewing each other as groups. It's really just unfair. You want to talk about fairness? It's unfair to lump people in with a group, like you said there, just labeling. When one thing happens, everyone's part of that in the whole SBC. I mean, it's just that's the way the society's tracking right now, and I just think it's a totally illogical and again unfair way to judge people. By the actions that they take, to just say like, well, one person did this and they're in this group, therefore all of you are guilty of that. I think it's the wrong way to go, and it just seems to be more popular these days. So
yeah, I think that's kind of part of this like black and white binary culture that we've created, where it's all or nothing. Where it's if one SBC member did this, then they're all guilty of it. And I think, too, we're doing that with CRT, right? With racism. The only way to actually deal with racism we've talked about this before, is to do it through CRT. It's like, well, there's a whole lot of other ways to deal with racism and to deal with wrongdoing. And it doesn't have to be through BLM or CRT. As believers, we know through Scripture, that's how we should deal with racism and all that. So, I think that's something, too, we need to guard against, regardless of your denomination, even if you're not a Christian. It's, there's more than one way to tackle the issues we face as a society, and we don't need to look to one that's a really broken system as a way to solve it. There are other options out there and available to us. So don't buy into the lie that there's only one way to fix a problem that exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, speaking of CRT, story number 2. So the commissioners of Surry County, North Carolina, they voted 3-2 this week in favor of banning CocaCola machines from county-owned buildings after the soda company criticized Georgia for passing voter integrity laws. Also, the Coca-Cola has come under fire for embracing CRT in their corporate trainings. So in a statement, County Commissioner Eddie Harris said, "The left wing in America, they defund, they boycott, they cancel, they tear down statues, all sorts of egregious actions. The expectation from them is the opposing political side will cower in the corner, and we're supposed to accept that, and it's supposed to be okay. It's not okay," he said. He also sent a letter to Coca-Cola CEO James Quincy, condemning the brand for not speaking out against the Chinese government's genocide against minority Muslims. He wrote, "Where is your outrage of this persecution in a communist country in which Coca-Cola is heavily invested?" So in February, like I said, Coca-Cola faced scrutiny over an alleged LinkedIn-hosted diversity training it was giving to employees. Among other things, the course encouraged participants to, quote, "try to be less white." which meant to be less oppressive, less defensive, less ignorant, and to break with white solidarity, just to name a few. Following the backlash, Coca-Cola apparently distanced itself from the training, which was written by race activist Robin DiAngelo, and LinkedIn reportedly removed the course from its platform as well. The county commissioner, for his part, slammed Coca-Cola for having used a course that he said disparaged people based on their race. Harris said the company's attempts to divide Americans by race and ethnicity are unnecessary in an era where Americans of all beliefs are more divided now than at any time in the last century. So what's the left saying? Well, these are policies embraced by the left, right? CRT and these anti-racist trainings. So that's something that is kind of a product of the left, though they haven't weighed in on this particular story as of yet. What's the right saying? Well, conservatives have been really critical of major corporations who are going this way. They've been wary of their embrace of things like critical race theory and any sort of woke ideology on sexuality as well. And Harris said that the Board of Commissioners made their decision because of Coca-Cola's, quote, support of the out-of-control cancel culture and bigoted leftist mob. So why does it matter? Dan, I'm not really certain that canceling each other back and forth is the best decision or the best way out of this. It seems kind of counterintuitive to suggest that the best way to beat cancel culture is to cancel another company for embracing cancel culture. No. I understand the potential financial aspect here, right? That, they don't want to give money and certainly don't want to give tax dollars to a company that they see as espousing CRT. But like I said, I don't know that canceling a company with a broad brush is really the best decision. My hope is that more people will just learn about this stuff. They'll learn about corporations and what they're doing and what they're espousing and promoting within their company. And they'll just vote with their wallets, right? They'll stop spending money on certain things and maybe start buying other things and use whatever platforms they have in their communities to speak out against this damaging stuff, rather than just making a broad brush decision. In my county, we're going to cancel Coca-Cola vending machines.
Yeah, I mean, because look, if you don't want to because it irritates you and you don't want to buy a product or whatever, fine, then go for it. But it just seems like you said, it's first of all, it kind of is like trying to defeat, the enemy by doing the same thing that the enemy does. It's like sort of just, right. You're just joining in with them. And it just seems like you create this cycle where now, you're mad at cancel culture, but then, you try to defeat it by canceling it. Doesn't make much sense. And also, too, I mean, look, leftist culture, if you're not a fan of it, I got news for you. Most of these corporations, of many of the things that you do, have leftists behind them. And so you're going to be canceling a lot of stuff in your life that you might like. And it just seems like, unless you like being living like a Puritan or something, or like the Amish, just disconnecting from all of technology and culture. If you want to go that route, go for it. But be ready for it, because if you say, I'm going to just disconnect from everything that I disagree with, you're going to be disconnecting from a lot of stuff. Don't ever order anything on Amazon. Don't watch anything on Disney. Don't watch anything on Netflix. And that's fine if you want to do it. I just think you're going to end up canceling yourself from society.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like when I was reading this story, my thought is, okay, well, who's the internet service provider that's, providing the internet to these county employees who are working in these buildings? It's like, so, you could go down this list, and like you said, you will end up being like a Luddite that doesn't purchase anything. And also, I kind of feel bad for the employees, county employees. They're not going to have any sort of vending machines at all if this goes on for too long, because like you said, you'll find fault with pretty much any company that exists.
Yeah. And I like soda too much to cancel soda. That's just my personal crutch there. But I didn't have Luddite on the bingo card today, by the way. Didn't think we were going to get Luddite on the into the program, but you did it, and it was it was appropriate. So well done. Never
miss an opportunity to use a word that's like, never used.
Indeed. All right. Let's head over to story number 3. And the state of California has agreed to enter into permanent injunctions that prohibit the state from imposing discriminatory regulations on all houses of worship statewide, and they agreed to pay $2.1 million in fees to settle 2 religious liberty cases. What does that mean? It means Gavin Newsom and California lost again, and churches won in battling the lockdowns that California imposed during the COVID pandemic. According to the attorneys who won this settlement, they said the South Bay case represents an unprecedented 3 trips to the U.S. Supreme Court in a 1-year period, and that resulted in a landmark decision that opened up the churches in California for 40 million people. These injunctions, permanent injunctions in these cases, uphold and protect one of the most cherished principles of our republic, the free exercise of religion. Amen there. Newsom was also, if you recall, recently ordered by a federal judge to pay $1.35 million in his capacity as governor to Harvest Rock Church of Pasadena, California. California had some of the more severe restrictions when it came to the pandemic, and so this one, Trey, shouldn't really be a left-right issue per se. But I know it gets debated that way often.
Yeah.
But we've discussed the nature of this debate. It's the left generally doesn't understand why churches they just can't obey the orders. They can't follow the rules, and view the right to worship. They don't view it as a critical fabric of our society. And while the right will believe that churches should view themselves as essential, and that just staying home and not going to church, not engaging with the community on behalf of the church through ministries and so forth, is detrimental to society. That's a position we should have and stick to. And standing up for that right is absolutely key. Not just to mention your freedom to worship. You don't want to give the state an inch in allowing them to restrict how you worship, or where you worship, or when you worship, or who you worship. And we see that right as essential, and apparently the courts do as well, which is a good thing.
I think it's weird that what we've seen over the last year or so with COVID and all these restrictions that have come out, it's kind of confirmed where I think a lot of the secular world is, which is that they see church as kind of akin to like a country club or like a hobby. And it's because not only are they have these pandemic restrictions limited what believers can do with one another in coming together for corporate worship, but we've also seen in other situations different lawmakers wanting to limit what can be expressed publicly about one's faith. We've seen it in the school system. Obviously, we've talked about it before recently with a PE teacher who, because he didn't want to, identify a student based on their sexual identity, or transgender, whatever, he wanted to identify them by their biology, and he said that goes back to his Christian faith. But we have a lot of these lawmakers that kind of want to neuter the faith. And it's like, well, you can believe that privately, but it can't be expressed outwardly in any way. Where it's just kind of turning faith into nothing more than like this hobby that I do on the side. It doesn't actually impact my life. My convictions don't play a role actively in my day-to-day existence. And church is not that big of a deal. You can just do it on Facebook live. Like, you don't need to actually meet together corporately. So I think it's really just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the church is, and the fact that it's supposed to have an active role in community, and believers are supposed to be physically actively together doing things for their communities, right, to spread the gospel. We're not just a country club that meets on the weekends to talk about things that we like, or, and do things privately together. We're supposed to be impacting our culture.
Yeah, and if you're engaged in the culture and you're spreading the gospel out there, and spreading the gospel is not just throwing tracts at people. Most churches,
right,
I'm sure you can attest to this, and people can attest to this who are listening and watching this, that your church goes out there and impacts real people. And you don't just bring the gospel message all the time, just saying it. They come alongside with help, right? You help someone in need, and you do it in the name of Christ, and that glorifies him, and it accomplishes his will. And so we're doing that side by side, and the community should feel that. They should feel that when it's not there. And if your church is not, if it can just stop for a year at a time and nobody notices, well, I think you might want to do some introspection there on your church, because
Yeah.
you should be having more impact in your local area.
Yeah, for sure. All right, story number 4. So, one of the largest cable providers in the United States has delivered a major blow to the elusive parent company behind the world's most prolific porn website, which is Pornhub. So, following in the footsteps of PayPal and other major credit card companies, the National Center on Sexual Exploitation announced this week that Comcast has cut ties with MindGeek, which, like I said, owns Pornhub. NCOSE announced in a press release that a representative for the Xfinity brand said in an email that the company was deeply concerned over the allegations against MindGeek and Pornhub, which has been credibly accused over the last several months of hosting sexual assault footage as well as child sexual abuse material or child pornography, and doing little to guard against and remove such content. A spokesperson for Comcast told me this morning that in April, Comcast made the decision to drop all of MindGeek's transactional content from our cable systems over the concerns that I said above, that they were deeply concerned over the reports against Pornhub. She also encouraged parents to be using parental controls to monitor and limit any other content that their children might try to access over their web services. Lena Nealon, one of the directors of NCOSE, described Comcast's decision as, quote, a major victory for human dignity. While Comcast still has more work to do to completely rid its services of the violent, racist, and exploitative content inherent in the pornography it continues to provide, she said, ending their relationship with MindGeek is a significant step and a win worth celebrating. So this one is not really a right or left story either. We should all be celebrating this decision by Comcast. It comes not long after more than 700 victims, advocates, and survivors of sexual exploitation sent a letter to Congress urging lawmakers to launch a criminal investigation into MindGeek. So the allegations against Pornhub started gaining serious mainstream attention, I guess, toward the end of last year and the beginning of this year. In February, we wrote about this at Faithwire. You might remember her, Dan. A young woman named Serena testified to Canadian lawmakers about her fight with Pornhub to get them to take down videos of her, literally from when she was 13 years old. And it took more than a week of back and forth with Pornhub for her to get the company to even acknowledge that they were there. And then a little bit longer to get them to even take the videos down. She condemned Pornhub for being really selfish, she said, and dragging their feet to remove the videos, because she argued the reason they dragged their feet is because it just brought them so much traffic to their site. Not just her videos, but so many other videos they knew were a big traffic boost for them. She said they really need to look at themselves in the mirror because they're prioritizing money and content over actual human beings' lives. She talked too about how she was suicidal and depressed and lived in her car for a long time as a young teenager. And she said the only people that I trusted in her life were her pet dogs. She said I had literally nobody who I could talk to, and was just going back and forth as a kid with Pornhub trying to deal with this. So, I'm glad it's getting attention, and this is certainly is a big step and a good step by Comcast.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I don't want to get lost in this conversation, and I know you don't, Trey, but I think a lot of people nationally, when they discuss this story, it's like there's this underlying assumption that somehow the porn industry is this legitimate industry, and it's just, there's like a legitimate side to it, right? And then there's this where you have these underage children having their videos out there, and well, that's bad. We need to crack down on that, but as Christians, of course, all pornography is wrong. I mean, it's just, and that needs to be said now, sadly, because we've seen the Barna polls, we've seen the surveys where more and more people are saying that pornography is a morally acceptable choice. A shocking amount of people, especially young people. And now, and it makes sense too, because we're living in this Me Too era where you have interactions sometimes where, there's legitimate, obviously, sexual assaults, so you're not dismissing that. But then there are times where people use that to their advantage. And so I think you have a lot of people, especially young people, that are just like, I want to be sexually engaged, but I don't really want to deal with any of that. So porn's just an easy out, and you have all these people with these accounts on those new sites that are popping up that I think it's called OnlyFans, where people just have their subscription services, and it's like more and more and more of this stuff is out there, and they view it as acceptable. That's the scary thing. And that's what needs to be said. Like, it's not just, well, the young, that's horrible. I mean, that is horrific and illegal. And the fact that they don't care doesn't surprise me, given what their actual industry is, and that they're, promoting people who are basically, downgrading themselves and dehumanizing themselves, and, making themselves a material object for the use and discarding of other people.
Yeah, so the way Pornhub has responded to this by kind of over the several months, I mean, they did remove like 10 million or so videos at the end of last year.
10 million videos.
Which to me is like an admission that right off.
Man.
Like, that's an admission there that if we're willing to remove that many videos, and there's a good chance we have no clue what's in there, and there's a good chance, like I said, that there's some illegal stuff in there. But so Pornhub has been so dismissive of a lot of these allegations, kind of digging their heels in. We wrote about this at Faithwire. The BBC did an investigation into OnlyFans that you mentioned, Dan, finding that kids were using that platform, kids as young as 12 and 13 years old, and posting explicit videos and pictures of themselves there, and making contact with adults that they have no business being in touch with. So if anything, to me, these last several months of exposure for Pornhub and this investigation into OnlyFans has shown that the exploitation of children is not a bug of this system. It's a feature. Like, it is there, and everybody is aware. Everybody who's in that industry is aware of it. So it's just at its core, this is an immoral and gross industry that needs to be weeded out altogether, because as believers, we know that whether you're a child or an adult, certainly if you're a child, that's an egregious and illegal offense. But as an adult, it's also showing that it's the objectification of a person. You're not seeing them anything more than an object for sexual gratification. And that goes against everything we know about the way God designed us in his image as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a reminder, as we wrap up today's episode, go over to setfreecourse.com. That is an online course that we created here at Faithwire and CBN, and Pastor Jeff Durbin, Pastor Toby Sumter, Pastor Doug Wilson talk about the true meaning, how God designed sex and sexuality. And it's a great course for anyone wanting to just get set straight on sex and sexuality, and this sin that's just ripping through the church just viciously. So we will be back here tomorrow with more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. Have a great day. Okay. Kind of ran out of music there, Trey.
Cutting it close every once in a while.
It happens. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to hop off. I'm going to run today, so I'm going to be off here. So we shall see you all back here tomorrow. Thanks for being here, and have a good one.